Hey everybody, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We're constantly updating it with new content and never seen before content. So if you want to get the latest from Harvest, hit the subscribe button. You've heard it said of those of old, you should not commit adultery. But I say whoever looks on a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Now look, that doesn't mean if you see a pretty girl or a good-looking guy, as you are not seeing right now, but we'll probably see later outside of church. But it doesn't mean that you notice someone is attractive. You say, well, there's a pretty girl. Oh, there's a good-looking guy. That's not what this is talking about. This is talking about seeing that person, but then allowing your mind to go to the wrong place. In fact, the word that is actually used here to describe this phrase, whoever looks on a woman, isn't referring to a casual glance. It's referring to the continuous act of looking. Not an incidental or involuntary glance, but an intentional and repeated gazing with the express purpose of lusting. This is the idea of a man, or even a woman, that would put themselves in a place where they would look at others to stimulate, feed, and encourage their lust. And Jesus is saying this is like committing adultery. Now, sometimes you don't do this on purpose, but you're exposed to something that you wish you had not been exposed to, but then you have a choice as to what you're going to do with it. A good example is David, the king of Israel, who was up in his rooftop patio, and he happened to notice a very beautiful woman named Bathsheba bathing herself, and he couldn't have helped noticing her, I suppose. And I'm not quite sure that Bathsheba did not know that he would have a good view of her and did not put herself in that place. There is a responsibility on her part too. She was culpable. She cooperated with David. She could have refused his advances, of course, but David saw her. So there it was. Now he could have turned away from it, but instead he acted on it. You know how the story unfolded. He had her brought up to his chambers. They had sex together. She was pregnant. And then instead of just coming clean and admitting it, he wanted to make it look like her husband was the father of the child. So he called the husband Uriah in from the battle and wanted him to spend the night with his wife. But Uriah wouldn't do that. And ultimately, David had Uriah sent to the front lines, and he was killed in battle, effectively had him murdered. And then David married Bathsheba, thought he covered up his sin. And then, of course, Nathan blew his cover and confronted him and said, you've sinned against God. And then tragically, the child died after it was born. It was just a mess, you see. But it all started with a lustful look. And so we need to think about that. That is why Job said, I've made a covenant with my eyes not to look on a woman. But a better translation would be not to look lustfully. You're going to see women and men, but don't look lustfully. You actually sometimes have to literally turn away. Maybe you're walking down the street and approaching you is some gorgeous girl or some great looking guy, and your mind's going to the wrong place. Sometimes you need to avert your gaze. Just look away. Don't look that way. Maybe if you're watching television and something comes on the screen, you know it's going to stimulate lust. You need to stop it, and there's a button on your remote control. It's usually red. If you push it, images disappear. It's called the power button. Use it. Don't go on your computer and just Google random words and just click whatever sites pop up. You might have images appearing on your computer screen you wish you had never seen before. Be careful. Guard your thoughts. Guard what you expose yourself to. This is the idea that is being conveyed. Let me add one thing to this. Not only should men not be looking lustfully at women, but women need to think very carefully about the way they present themselves so they don't encourage lust. Don't look at me that way, girls. You know what I'm talking about. The way you dress, what you wear, what you don't wear. Well, what are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. Well, how should I dress? Do I have to wear sackcloth? I don't know, sackcloth is nice. No, I'm kidding. You can still be stylish. You can still dress in a cool way, but just maybe apply this principle. Act as though Jesus were picking you up and taking you out that night, would you feel comfortable wearing what you're wearing? I'm going home right now. And the sad thing is, it's guys, I'm going home now. You say, Greg, give me a break. Some guys would lust after a tree. This is true. But there is a responsibility on the part of the girl as well. There's a word that we seem to have taken out of our vocabulary. We need to get back again, called modesty. And Christian girls are to apply it. So here's the answer. Look at verse 29. So if your eye causes you to lust, gouge it out and throw it away. So there you go. And if your right hand sins, cut it off. Because it's better to lose your arm or your hand or your eye than to not make it into heaven. Now, what does that mean? Well, obviously, Jesus is not speaking literally, because if the problem is in the heart, what good is gouging out an eye or cutting off a hand? If the right eye were gone, the left one could still look lustfully. If the right hand were gone, the left one could still carry on sinful acts. Let's understand what he was saying in the culture of the time. In the Jewish culture, the right hand represented a person's best skills and most precious faculties. The right eye represented one's best vision, and the right hand one's best skills. So here's what Jesus is saying. Do whatever is necessary to keep yourself from falling into sin. And sometimes you have to take drastic measures. Maybe you're in a relationship right now and you've allowed it to become sexual and it's dragging you down. You need to probably just cut that relationship off right now. It needs to be a serious step. Maybe you have a problem with internet pornography and you just, well, you know what? At the very least, put a filter on your computer, but maybe you need to just stink and unplug the computer and stop going online. I'm not saying for everyone, but I'm saying for some people, if this is a weakness and a vulnerability, you may have to take extra steps in the right direction. Do whatever it takes to walk right before God. That's the idea of gouging out an eye or cutting off an arm. Hebrews 12 says, let us lay aside the sin and the weight that so easily besets us. Let us lay aside the weight and the sin that so easily besets you. And the weight varies from person to person. What may be a weight for one may not necessarily be a weight for another. What brings one person down doesn't necessarily bring another person down. So we each have to make these decisions before God.